Are you watching from Seattle? Or maybe Portland like me? Or perhaps you're tuning in from somewhere far away, maybe even another country. Wherever you are, I hope you'll stay with me because what I'm about to share changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I'm 64 years old. I spent 35 years teaching English at Lincoln High School here in Portland, Oregon, and I've been married to my husband Michael for 41 years. 41 years. That's longer than some people live. We raised 2 beautiful daughters together, survived job losses and health scares, and finally made it to retirement. We were supposed to be enjoying our golden years, you know? Traveling, spoiling our grandchildren, maybe finally taking that trip to Ireland we'd always talked about. But every night for the past 6 months, something had been happening that filled me with a dread I couldn't quite name. Every single night, at exactly 3 a.m, I would wake up to find Michael's side of the bed empty. At first, I thought nothing of it. Men his age, they get up to use the bathroom, right? It's perfectly normal. But this wasn't a quick trip to the bathroom. This was different. You know that feeling when you wake up and sense something's wrong, even before you're fully conscious? That primal instinct that tells you danger is near? That's what I felt every time I opened my eyes at 3 a.m. and reached across the bed to find cold sheets where my husband should have been. The first few times, I waited for him to come back. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes 20. When he finally returned, he'd slip under the covers so quietly, like he was trying not to wake me. I'd pretend to be asleep, my heart pounding, wondering where he'd been. In the morning, I'd ask casually, "Did you sleep okay last night?" And he'd look me right in the eye and say, like a baby, "Why do you ask?" That's when I knew something was terribly wrong, because Michael never lied to me. In 41 years of marriage, he was the most honest man I knew. Sometimes brutally honest, actually. He'd tell me when my haircut wasn't flattering or when my pot roast needed more seasoning. He didn't sugarcoat things. So when he started lying about those nightly disappearances, every instinct I had started screaming that something was very, very wrong. I tried to tell myself it was innocent. Maybe he couldn't sleep and was watching TV downstairs so he wouldn't disturb me. Maybe he was dealing with some health issue he was embarrassed to talk about. Men can be so proud about those things, especially at his age. But as the weeks turned into months, and it happened every single night like clockwork, my worry turned into fear. I'd lie there in the dark after he'd sneak back into bed, and I'd listen to his breathing. Sometimes it was calm and even, like he'd just been reading or watching a movie. But other times, I swear I could hear his heart racing. I could feel tension radiating off his body like heat. And once, just once, I thought I heard him whisper to himself, "It's the only way. God forgive me, but it's the only way." Those words haunted me for days. I started paying more attention to everything. The way he looked at me over breakfast, his eyes lingering a little too long, like he was memorizing my face. The way he'd suddenly started being extra affectionate, bringing me flowers every Friday, complimenting me constantly. At first, I thought maybe he was trying to rekindle the romance in our marriage, which would have been sweet. But combined with everything else, it felt off. It felt like guilt. My daughter Rebecca came to visit one Sunday, and I almost told her everything. She was in the kitchen helping me make her grandmother's apple pie recipe, and she said, "Mom, you seem distracted. Is everything okay?" I opened my mouth to tell her about your father's strange behavior, but what was I going to say? That he gets up every night at 3 a.m. She'd probably say the same thing I'd been telling myself, that it was just age, just insomnia, just nothing. But it wasn't nothing. I knew it in my bones. 2 weeks ago, I decided I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. I had to know what Michael was doing every night. So I made a plan. I'd pretend to take one of my sleeping pills, the ones my doctor prescribed after my sister passed away last year, and I'd fake being in a deep sleep. Then I'd wait and see what he did. That night, I went through our usual routine. We watched Jeopardy. I beat him at 3 out of 5 categories like always, and we headed upstairs around 10. I made a show of taking my pill, even filling a glass of water and everything. Michael watched me take it. Actually watched me, making sure I swallowed it. That detail bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I climbed into bed and closed my eyes, forcing my breathing to become slow and deep. Michael sat on his side of the bed for a while, and I could feel him looking at me. Just looking. Not touching, not speaking, just watching me breathe. It took everything in me not to open my eyes and demand to know what was going on, but I waited. Finally, he lay down beside me. I heard him set his alarm, which was strange because he never set an alarm anymore. We were both retired. What did he need an alarm for? But I kept my eyes closed and my breathing steady. The minutes crawled by like hours. I counted them, 180 minutes until 3 a.m. Every muscle in my body was tense, despite my efforts to appear relaxed. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more frightening than the last. At 2:55 a.m., I felt Michael shift beside me. His alarm hadn't even gone off yet, but he was already awake, waiting. At exactly 3 o'clock, he slowly, carefully slid out of bed. I heard the soft rustle of his clothes as he got dressed in the dark. Not his pajamas, but actual clothes. Jeans, a button-down shirt, like he was going somewhere. He stood beside the bed for a moment, and I felt his presence there, looming over me in the darkness. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Then I felt something that made my blood run cold. His fingers gently touching my throat, feeling for my pulse, checking if I was really asleep, or checking if I was alive. After what felt like an eternity, he walked out of the bedroom, closing the door with barely a sound. I waited until I heard his footsteps descend the stairs before I opened my eyes. My hands were shaking. What was I doing? Should I confront him? Call someone? But call who? And say what? My husband gets up at night and checks my pulse? No. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what was happening. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and crept to the bedroom door, opening it just a crack. I could see a faint glow coming from downstairs, not from the living room where the TV was, but from Michael's study. The room he'd claimed as his home office when he retired, the one he'd told me not to worry about organizing because he'd take care of it himself. I tiptoed down the hallway, avoiding the third step that creaked and the spot near the banister that groaned under weight. 41 years in this house had taught me every sound it made. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I could see light spilling from under the study door, and I could hear Michael's voice. He was talking to someone. At 3 a.m, my husband was having a conversation. I pressed myself against the wall and moved closer, my heart hammering in my chest. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear him clearly now. Yes, I understand the terms, he was saying. The policy pays out the full amount only if it happens within the policy year. I have 2 months left. Silence. He was on the phone. No, she doesn't suspect anything. I've been very careful. The prescription has been easy to access, and she already takes sleeping pills, so no one will question it. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself, my mind refusing to process what I was hearing. $500,000 is worth it, Michael continued, his voice cold, clinical. After 40 years of marriage, I deserve to finally live the life I want. She's been holding me back, always so cautious, so boring, never wanting to take risks or try anything new. I'm 67 years old, and I'm not going to spend my last good years trapped in this monotonous existence. He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. The insurance investigator won't find anything. It'll look like she simply didn't wake up. Heart failure, they'll say, or maybe her sleep medication dosage was off. At her age, these things happen, and I'll be the grieving widower who gets to start over with the life insurance payout. $500,000, tax-free. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My husband, my Michael, the man I'd spent 41 years with, the man who'd held my hand when our daughters were born, who'd cried at our wedding, was planning to murder me. I've already researched the medication interaction, he was saying. Just a small amount added to her regular sleeping pills over time. It'll build up in her system gradually. The autopsy will show she had prescription medications in her blood, but they'll assume she took them herself. No one will suspect. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a whimper, something, because suddenly Michael stopped talking. The room went silent. "I'll call you back," he said quickly, and I heard footsteps coming toward the door. I ran. I didn't think. I just moved, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor as I sprinted back up the stairs. I heard the study door open fully just as I reached the landing. I threw myself back into bed, pulling the covers up, forcing my breathing to slow even though my heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate, coming to check on me. The bedroom door opened, and I sensed Michael enter the room. He stood there in the doorway for what felt like hours. Then he crossed to the bed and stood over me again, watching. I kept my eyes closed, my face relaxed, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. He leaned down close to my face. I could feel his breath on my cheek. "Catherine," he whispered, testing to see if I'd respond. I didn't move. "Catherine, can you hear me?" Still, I didn't react. After a moment, he straightened up and left the room, pulling the door closed behind him. I lay there in the dark, tears streaming silently down my face, my mind racing. 41 years of marriage, and this whole time, had he been unhappy? Had I really been holding him back? Or had something changed recently? And more importantly, what was I going to do? I couldn't go to the police. What would I tell them? That I overheard my husband talking about a life insurance policy? That he mentioned medication? I had no proof. It would be my word against his, and knowing Michael, he'd have covered his tracks perfectly. He'd make me sound paranoid, maybe even suggest I was having some kind of mental health crisis. After all, I was the one on sleeping medication, right? I couldn't tell my daughters. They adored their father. Rebecca was about to have her first baby, and Jennifer was planning her wedding. I couldn't destroy their family, their image of their father, without being absolutely certain. But I knew what I'd heard, and I knew I had to act. The next morning, I got up before Michael and went through the motions of making coffee, preparing breakfast, acting like everything was normal. When he came down, he kissed my cheek and asked if I'd slept well. Like a baby, I lied, the same lie he'd been telling me for months. "You? Oh, woke up a few times," he said casually, buttering his toast. "That's age for you." I watched him across the breakfast table, this man I thought I knew, and saw a complete stranger. How had I missed this? Were there signs I'd ignored? Or had he just gotten very, very good at hiding who he really was? Over the next few days, I started planning. I couldn't just run. We had joint bank accounts, shared assets, a whole life together. If I suddenly left, he'd know I suspected something, and who knows what he might do. I needed to be smart about this. I started with my medication. I poured out half of my sleeping pills and replaced them with vitamins that looked similar. I kept the bottle in the same place in the bathroom medicine cabinet, but I stopped taking the real pills. If Michael was adding something to them, I wasn't going to give him the chance to slowly poison me. Next, I called my old friend Patricia, who'd been a nurse for 40 years before she retired. We'd taught together at Lincoln High. She ran the health office while I taught English. I told her I wanted to get some blood work done. Just a routine checkup, but I asked her to recommend a doctor who wasn't in our usual network, someone Michael wouldn't know about. "Catherine, is everything all right?" she asked, concern in her voice. "Just being cautious," I said lightly. "You know how it is at our age. Can't be too careful about our health." The doctor she recommended was wonderful. I explained that I was concerned about medication interactions and wanted a full toxicology screen. I didn't tell her why, just that I wanted to be thorough. The results came back 5 days later, and there it was, traces of a medication I'd never been prescribed, something that, in combination with my sleep medication, could cause cardiac arrest. I had my proof, but I still couldn't go to the police, not yet. I needed more. I needed to know the full extent of his plan. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I found one through Patricia. Her nephew had done some work for lawyers in Portland. I paid him in cash from my small savings account, the one Michael didn't know about, the one I'd opened years ago with money from my grandmother's estate. "I need you to look into my husband's finances," I told him in a coffee shop far from our neighborhood. Specifically, any life insurance policies he might have taken out recently. The investigator, a kind man in his 50s named David, didn't ask many questions. He just nodded and got to work. 3 days later, he called me with the information. Michael had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on me 8 months ago. He'd forged my signature on the application, listed himself as the sole beneficiary, and had been paying the premiums from a checking account I didn't know he had. The policy would pay out double if I died accidentally within the first policy year. 8 months ago. That's when the nightly disappearances had started. "There's more," David said. "Your husband has been in contact with someone named Vanessa Martinez. They've been exchanging emails for about a year. Based on the content, it appears to be more than a friendship." Vanessa Martinez. I didn't recognize the name, but apparently she was very real. A 42-year-old real estate agent, Michael, had met at some retirement planning seminar. The emails David showed me made me sick. Michael wasn't just planning to kill me for the insurance money, he was planning to start a new life with someone else. "We could take this to the police now," David suggested gently. "This is attempted fraud, possibly conspiracy to commit murder." But I shook my head. "Not yet. I need to handle this my way." That night, I pretended to take my sleeping pill again, and right on schedule, Michael got up at 3 a.m. But this time, I was ready. I had a small recording device in my pocket, something David had given me. I waited until Michael went downstairs, and then I followed him, staying in the shadows. He made his usual phone call, this time to Vanessa, talking about just 2 more weeks and then we can be together. He discussed the insurance payout, how they'd wait a respectful 6 months before going public with their relationship, how they'd use the money to buy a condo in Maui. I recorded every word. When he finally ended the call and headed back upstairs, I was already back in bed, the recording device hidden safely in my dresser. The next morning, I called my daughters and asked them to come over for Sunday dinner. Both of them. "It was important," I said. Then I called my attorney, an old friend from my book club, and asked her to meet me before the family dinner. "Catherine, you're scaring me," Margaret said when she saw the evidence I'd compiled. "We need to go to the police right now." "We will," I assured her. "But first, I want my daughters to hear this from me. With you here as my witness, I want them to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing." Sunday dinner was the hardest thing I've ever done. I made pot roast, Michael's favorite, and watched him smile and joke with our daughters, acting like the perfect husband, the perfect father, the perfect grandfather to be. Rebecca talked about nursery colors, and Jennifer showed us pictures of wedding venues, and all I could think was that this man, this monster, had been planning to take me away from all of this. After dessert, I asked Michael to join me in the living room. The girls looked confused, but I'd asked Margaret to keep them in the kitchen, to explain after I'd confronted him. In the living room, I closed the door and turned to face my husband of 41 years. "I know everything," I said simply. His face went pale. "Catherine, I don't know what you—" "I know about the life insurance policy. I know about Vanessa Martinez. I know about your plan to kill me and make it look like an accident." My voice was steady, even though my hands were shaking. "I have recordings, Michael. I have medical evidence of the poison you've been giving me. I have proof of the forged insurance documents. And I have a lawyer." He stared at me, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Was it regret? Fear? But then his expression hardened. "You can't prove any of that," he said coldly. "Actually, I can." I pulled out my phone and played just 10 seconds of the recording, enough for him to hear his own voice discussing the insurance payout with Vanessa. The color drained from his face completely. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "You're going to sign divorce papers, giving me full ownership of this house and 70% of our joint assets. You're going to cancel that life insurance policy immediately. You're going to move out tonight. And in exchange, I won't press charges." "Catherine, please. I'm not finished. You're going to tell our daughters that we've grown apart, that this was mutual, that you've met someone else. You will not make yourself the victim in this. You will not make me look unstable or paranoid. You will take responsibility for ending this marriage. Do you understand?" He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. "Or I go to the police right now with everything I have. Attempted murder, insurance fraud, forgery. You'll spend your golden years in prison, Michael. And Vanessa, well, I'm sure she'll wait for you. Though I doubt you'll have much of that insurance money to offer her from behind bars." The fight went out of him. He slumped into the armchair, suddenly looking every one of his 67 years. "How did you know?" You checked my pulse every night at 3 a.m., I said. You thought I was too drugged to notice, but mothers learn to sleep lightly. 40 years of listening for sick children taught me to be aware, even in sleep, and I knew you, Michael. I knew when you were lying. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, quietly, I did love you once. I know, I said. That's the saddest part of all this. I loved you too. I loved you enough to give you a way out that doesn't destroy our daughters' lives completely. Don't make me regret that, Mercy. That night, Michael packed a bag and left. Margaret helped me explain everything to Rebecca and Jennifer. There were tears, shock, anger, so much anger. But there was also relief that I was safe, that I'd been smart enough to protect myself. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Michael signed everything without a fight. He and Vanessa moved to Arizona. Apparently, she wasn't interested in waiting around without the insurance money, but she settled for a divorced man with his reduced assets. I kept the house. I kept my life. And I kept my dignity. Today, I'm 65 years old. My granddaughter Emma was born 6 months ago, and she's the light of my life. Jennifer got married last month in a beautiful ceremony here in Portland, and I walked her down the aisle. I'm teaching part-time at a community college, helping adults earn their GEDs, and I've joined a hiking group with other women my age. Patricia and I go to the coast every other weekend. I'm living the life I was almost robbed of, and I'm living it fully. Sometimes people ask me how I found the strength to do what I did, to confront Michael, to take control of my own story. The truth is, I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified, but I also knew that I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I'd spent 41 years building a life, raising daughters, being a good person, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my husband, take that away from me. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't gaslight yourself into ignoring the warning signs. I could have told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things, that surely my husband of 4 decades wouldn't hurt me. But I listened to that voice inside me, that primal instinct that said danger was near, and it saved my life. And if you find yourself in a situation where someone you trusted has betrayed you in the worst possible way, know that you have more strength than you think. You have the power to protect yourself, to seek help, to rebuild. It won't be easy, and there will be days when you want to give up. But you're worth fighting for. Your life is worth protecting. I'm sitting here in my living room as I tell you this story, looking out at the garden I've spent the last few months renovating. I planted roses, pink ones, my favorite, and they're just starting to bloom. Emma's baby blanket is on the couch next to me, waiting for her next visit. Jennifer sent me pictures this morning from her honeymoon in Greece. This is my life now. Not the one I planned 41 years ago when I married Michael, but a life nonetheless. A good life. A life I chose to fight for. And every night, when I go to sleep in my own bed, in my own house, I sleep peacefully, because I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm strong. And I know that I'll never again ignore that voice inside me that says something's wrong. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt that same instinct telling you to pay attention, to dig deeper, to protect yourself, I hope you'll listen to it. And if you're going through something similar right now, please reach out for help. Talk to a friend, call a domestic violence hotline, see a lawyer. You don't have to face it alone. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't an easy one to hear, but sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we need to tell, and the ones we need to hear. Take care of yourself, wherever you are, and remember, you're stronger than you know. God bless.